If I could be you, if you could be me, for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's mind. Oh, if you could see you through my eyes instead of your ego. I believe it'd be surprised to see that you've been blind. Oh, walking out of my shoes, just walking out of my shoes. Yeah, before you abuse, criticize and accuse, and walking out of my shoes.
Doing Bob.
Now we will spend a day
on
throwing stones at one another. Those are the things when my head same way you do. Ooh. Oh well, I may be common people, but I'm your brother. And when it's struck out and try to hurt me, it's hurting you. Oh, I'm mercy, walk 'em out in my shoes. Walk 'em out in my shoes, yeah. Before you abuse, criticize and accuse, and walk 'em out in my shoes. Now there are people on reservations and out in the ghetto, and rather there for the grace of God, oh, you and I. Oh, if I only had a wings, I'll be an angel.
Sounds good.
Don't you know I'll
Probably by the
fly?
weekend. Good enough. Gotta go. I gotta meet. Bye. What's this?
It's the Mackie file.
You're shitting me.
No.
Do we have Mackie in custody?
No, we don't.
What charges do we have Mackie on?
We did have break and enter charges going forward on him, but the victim, Gardner, started to recant her statement she made to Sergeant McKay. McKay said throw in the towel, it's a waste of our time.
How the fuck does a file get this big and we're nowhere near charges?
Rabinovich.
What do you mean Rabinovich?
Rabinovich fucked up.
What do you mean Rabinovich fucked up?
According to Hammond, Rabinovich was distracted during the interview.
Distracted? What do you mean distracted?
Purportedly, the victim had rather large attributes. Plus, her father, who's some bigwig nuclear engineer over at Triumph, he put a scare into Rabinovich.
I understand Rabinovich and Hammond brought Mackie in for an interview.
No, Mackie came in of his own accord to follow up on a complaint he made against the victim, Gardner.
Great, get me the interview tape.
There is no interview tape.
What do you mean there is no interview tape?
They had him in a room for an hour and never recorded it.
What the fuck do you mean they never recorded it? How the fuck does a file get this big? Suspect comes in voluntarily and we don't record it.
Rabinovich fucked up. A bit of poo-poo and shoo-shoo, it seems. We'll be lucky if Mackie doesn't sue.
All right, what are all these tapes about?
They're recordings of conversations between Mackie and the victim, Gardner.
Okay, how did we get them?
Mackie. He gave them to us.
Jesus H. Christ. What kind of suspect provides us with audio recordings? How'd the interview go with Hammond in the Sakic case?
He wouldn't speak to it.
Interesting. 1 sec. Rankin. Okay, 10 minutes. Good enough. Thanks. Okay, I gotta go.
Okay.
Did we get the Sakic file from the Police Complaint Commission?
It's the red file.
The red file. Oh, thanks. You know, I wonder what the connection is between these two, Mackie and Sakic.
As far as I can gather, it's just a strange coincidence.
We're not in the business of coincidence, especially the strange one. And McCluskey, get this fucking thing off my desk.
Anything I do.
Hey, man.
Hey. You all right? Yeah, fine.
Badge is on the ground, man.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right, man.
Blanka Sakic was alleged to have disclosed information from a police file concerning a suspect of a one Jason Mackie, under investigation by the Vancouver Police for domestic assault, break and enter, sexual harassment and stalking. The initial assault charge against Jason Mackie was through the Carameos RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, by a Constable Dale Sheath. Blanka Sakic also concurrently had a complaint of sexual assault against her superior acting Sgt Keith Hammond of the Vancouver Police Department. Sgt Keith Hammond also happened to be one of the police officers that were handling the Mackie file.
Okay. It's March 13th, 2002 at 14:35 hours. We're at 2110 Cami Street, Vancouver Police Station 6th floor meeting room. We're here to discuss the follow-up interview of Miss Blanka Sakic relating to the improper disclosure, allegations of improper disclosure of information from a police file. Present is myself, Lawrence Rankin, R-A-N-K-I-N, with the Vancouver Police, presently assigned to the Sexual Offense Squad. Mr. Lyle Kent, K-E-N-T, a Teamsters representative. Miss Kathy Peters, P-E-T-E-R-S, also a Teamsters representative. Miss Blanka Sakic, S-A-K-I-C, civilian employee of the Vancouver Police. Miss Karen Maitland, M-A-I-T-L-A-N-D, shop steward, and Miss Joey Kerr, K-E-R-R, HR advisor. Everyone's had the opportunity to read the memo that I've addressed to Inspector Rolls dated March 11, 2002 from myself in regards to this matter. I concluded that this the memo with the paragraph that I made arrangements to interview Miss Sakic on this date. The interview is to be held with the view of obtaining any information that she may have had in relation to the findings of this investigation as it pertains to the improper disclosure of information from an ongoing police investigation. Okay, I'd like to begin by just asking right from the very beginning, where I begin at point number 1, if you have anything to respond to with respect to the excerpts of Mr. Turner's statements.
Joel Turner was a neighbor of Blanka Sakic residing in the same apartment building. Mr. Turner also happened to be a close friend of Jason Mackie that was being investigated by the Vancouver Police Department. Blanka and Jason would meet for the first time by chance one October night while Jason visited Joel's apartment. It was then Blanka was alleged to have disclosed information to Jason about the case the Vancouver police had against him.
For question 1, here on several occasions, Mr. Mackie and Mrs. Sakic had discussed legal issues surrounding Mr. Mackie's criminal investigation. When I met Mr. Mackie, he was acquitted. There was never a criminal investigation going on to start with. We did not discuss legal issues. We discussed his situation.
Okay, now with respect to, any idea why Mr. Turner would say in his interview then with Sergeant Barber and Sergeant McCluskey, why the three of you had discussed legal issues surrounding Mr. Mackie's criminal investigation?
I don't believe that Mr. Turner used criminal investigation or the word legal, because Mr. Turner is my neighbor,
Yes.
whom I became very good friends with and who I met Mr. Mackie through. And for that reason, I had heard of Mr. Mackie's situation because he was telling me about the situation before.
With now you had mentioned that you had discussed the situation, that being the criminal investigation, or that is conviction of assault elsewhere.
Jason Mackie was arrested and charged for domestic assault against his estranged ex-girlfriend by a Constable Dale Sheets of the RCMP and was subsequently convicted. Jason chose to represent himself at his original trial. Jason Mackie appealed his conviction and was waiting for his upcoming appeal trial. Jason's ex-girlfriend Yvonne Gardner hoped to defeat his upcoming appeal and involved the Vancouver Police Department on many frivolous false police investigations, succeeding to dupe one detective, Richard Rabinovich. Detective Richard Rabinovich, Dick, was the leading detective in charge of the Mackie file.
He has never ever been convicted of anything. He's been acquitted of what Mr. Rabinovich police file, whatever they have.
Right. What, okay. So your understanding is that while you were working as a civilian staff member of the domestic violence unit, you were aware that Detective Rabinovich was conducting a criminal investigation which allegations had been made against Mr. Mackie by Ms. Gardner.
Yvonne Carmel Gardner was Jason Mackie's estranged ex-girlfriend. She was known to have fabricated photos of her alleged injuries from the alleged assault with her friend Amanda Schmidt, a Surrey school board teacher, to help to try to secure Jason Mackie's conviction.
No, I met Mr. Mackie. I went the next day to work and I said I met this guy named Jason Mackie. I said it in front of all the detectives, and Mr. Rabinovich looked at me and he goes, "Oh my God, do you know who he is?" And I said, well, you told me a little bit about his situation. And he said, well, I go, but he's been acquitted. He said, yes, he's been acquitted, but he's crazy. She's crazier. And the father is a big influence, and that was it.
Philip Gardner, Yvonne's father, was a nuclear physicist at the University of British Columbia and was alleged to have put a scare into Detective Richard Rabinovich and threatened a lawsuit if Jason Mackie was able to gain a successful appeal against his conviction.
Okay. Are you aware that that Mr. Mackie was acquitted of an assault charge outside of Vancouver, the Lower Mainland?
Yeah, it had nothing to do with Vancouver. It's in Penticton or something.
Karamias.
Constable Dale Sheets of the Karamios RCMP was alleged to have conspired with Yvonne Gardner to fabricate the photos used in the trial against Jason Mackie. Constable Sheets did not receive or file the said photos until 9 months after the alleged assault, just before Jason Mackie's trial. Constable Sheets went on to give false testimony and committed perjury at Jason Mackie's trial.
Mr. Mackie was tried and convicted of this offense on July 18, 2000. Mr. Mackie states that during the trial Constable Sheets of the RCMP Karamias detachment lied while giving his testimony. Constable Sheets' written statement on the night of September 26, 1999 had words added to it that were not the words of Yvonne Gardner and did not accurately describe the events of that evening. Mr. Mackie was also concerned that Constable Sheets could take his photo on the night of the incident but did not bother to photograph Ms. Gardner's alleged wounds. Mr. Mackie alleges that Constable Sheets' original report of the incident described Ms. Gardner as being visibly shaken, but that there were no visible marks of an assault on her person. The prosecution at the trial produced some photos of Ms. Gardner showing brownish blue on her neck. Mr. Mackie believes these marks were fabricated by using makeup. When shown these photographs, Constable Sheets identified them as accurately indicating Ms. Gardner's condition immediately after the incident. Mr. Mackie states the RCMP had not taken the photographs. He states that Amanda Schmidt, a friend of Ms. Gardner, took them on September 27, 1999, one day after the incident. Mr. Mackie states that Ms. Yvonne Gardner had sent these photos to Crown and admitted that she had visited a walk-in clinic. Amanda Schmidt had allegedly taken these photos of Yvonne in a university dorm room on September 27, 1999. Question. Okay, subsequently, as I understand it, you obtained some photographs from Ms. Gardner, is that correct? Answer. That is correct. Question. Producing and showing to you a booklet containing 6 photographs. Would those be the photographs that you received from her? Answer. Those would be the photographs. Mr. Campbell. Exhibit A for identification, please. Your Honor. The Court. Mr. Mackie, were you given a copy of the... Mr. Mackie. Yes, I was. The Court. A booklet of photographs, sir? Mr. Mackie. Thank you. The Court. Exhibit A for identification. Exhibit A, for identification, booklet of photographs.
Begin tonight in Colwood, where a former Sydney North Saanich RCMP officer who pleaded guilty to child pornography charges last year learned his fate today. Dale Sheets was immediately taken into custody after being given a 6-month prison sentence. The former Mountie was also handed a $200 fine for firearms offenses. The Sydney-based officer was arrested in December 2013. Sheets had pleaded guilty to 1 count of possession of child porn and 2 firearms charges. He'd been an officer with the Sydney North Saanich RCMP at the time of the charges, but was suspended and left the force shortly after his arrest.
What is disturbing, I think, just creating anything that involves children in a sexual way is a terrible thing. And it's hard on everybody who has to view any of these images.
The sentence also comes with numerous conditions. Sheets won't be allowed to access the internet, possess any pornography, or be in the company of anyone under the age of 16 unless a parent is present.
I don't know details.
Right. All right, now that it occurred elsewhere, but that there was still an ongoing investigation because Ms. Gardner has made allegations against Mr. Mackie that he'd been harassing her. That was separate and distinct from the criminal.
Yvonne Gardner filed many more numerous false complaints against Jason Mackie and involved many people in her duplicity and dubious behavior in hopes of having his upcoming appeal quashed. Subsequently, all false police reports ended up on Detective Richard Rabinovich's desk. He was the officer that Yvonne had duped in the beginning. Yvonne had fabricated a break-and-enter of her apartment and accused Jason Mackie of doing so. Sergeant John McKay of the Vancouver City Police Force was tasked to investigate it.
At 3:15 hours, Mackie turned himself into police at 312 Main. He was arrested by Constable Houghton and advised of his charter rights. Mackie was not questioned and simply stated he understood his rights. Conclusion: based on the above, I think that further action on our part is a waste of time. Sergeant John McKay.
Yvonne Gardner fabricated a story whereas a sexually explicit note was taped to her door.
Attended the home of the victim in response to a suspicious circumstance at that location. Upon arrival, I spoke with the victim Yvonne Gardner, who advised me of the following. At approximately 22:00 hours the 12th of January 00 she arrived home. As she approached her door, she claims there was a typed note taped to the door saying the following:
"Seeing you makes me so hot and turned on I could fuck you all night long. I want to feel your naked body pressed to mine. I want to suck on your tits and feel the wetness of your pussy on my fingers. Thinking about you makes me so hard I could come all over you right now."
For some reason, witness Mackie insisted on taking the note. I advised that I would need to seize the note, and she said she would arrange for her boyfriend to meet with me to get it. Mackie called and I attended to number 109, 990 Butte Street, the home of Mackie's boss. Mackie was nervous and wrecked and admitted that he had attended St. Paul's Hospital this night to speak to a psychiatrist. He feels at his wit's end as a result of his relationship with Yvonne Gardner. This is a long and involved story in which Yvonne Gardner accused Mackie of assault for which he was charged. She then recanted her statement. There is a no-go, no-contact order against Mackie as a result of the assault charge, and there are further accusations stemming from an incident 99272514. Mackie showed me copies of a journal allegedly written by Yvonne Gardner detailing certain plots hatched by her and her girlfriend. These include falsely telling Mackie that she is pregnant with his child and how she is plotting revenge against Mackie. Mackie feels that Yvonne Gardner is working in the Swedish Touch massage parlor, and there are references to this in the journal. No follow-up required at this time. Copy to Sex Offense Squad. Thought. Would send a copy to you as this female may make accusations against Mackie in the future. She has falsely accused him in the past and seems out to destroy him. This may be the start of such a plan.
Yvonne Gardner had written 2 statements on behalf of Jason Mackie, trying to get the original assault charges dropped, but then later recanted writing them by saying that she did not write them and accused Mackie of forging them.
Further to your correspondence regarding Exhibits C and D to my client's affidavit. I confirm your advice to me of last week that the document examiner concluded that the documents in question were not forged, as alleged by Ms. Gardner. Please provide me with a copy of the document examiner's report. Thank you.
Yvonne Gardner's behavior was becoming more psychopathic and trying to get his appeal quashed. Mr. Mackie filed a complaint of harassment against Yvonne Gardner.
It is my opinion that victim Mackie has provided enough evidence to warrant a police investigation into criminal harassment, public mischief, defamation of victim Mackie's character, and perjury. Victim Mackie appears to have endured 2 years of victimization by suspect Yvonne Gardner. According to the evidence gathered by victim Mackie, suspect Yvonne Gardner has repeatedly followed, communicated, besetted and watched, and threatened victim Mackie has spent approximately $15,000 so far to prove his innocence. Victim Mackie is appealing the assault conviction and steadfastly claims that he did not assault suspect Yvonne Gardner, although he bears no ill will toward the criminal justice system. The emotional, financial, and social damage that he has been subjected to has intimidated him and made him lose faith in justice.
Mr. Mackie's complaint of harassment against Yvonne Gardner ended up on Richard Rabinovich's desk and never investigated.
I had no idea of this. No, all I know is that this man was acquitted, and that's all I know.
You know no more information?
None.
Okay. With respect to the second point, where Mr. Turner says that you had told Mr. Turner that you and Mr. Mackie had conversation in relation to his file.
I had no idea of this. No. All I know is that this man was acquitted, and that's all I know.
You know no more information?
None.
Okay. With respect to the second point, where Mr. Turner says that you had told Mr. Turner that you and Mr. Mackie had conversation in relation to his file.
Again, Mr. Mackie and I had never discussed his file. When I talked to Jason Mackie about his situation, all he would tell me is about what happened to him and in the past 3 years. They used to be roommates. They still are. He knows everything about it.
Yvonne Gardner and her friend, the aforementioned Amanda Schmidt, fabricated fake pregnancies claiming various men were the father in an attempt to solicit money from Jason Mackie and other men. Jason was able to acquire a copy of Yvonne's diaries. These diaries were given to Detective Richard Rabinovich to help prove Yvonne's duplicitous behavior, but Detective Richard Rabinovich helped cover up these diaries and did not act upon them.
Dear Diary, I just finished my shift at Madame Cleo's. I want to go to Damon's party, but Joe will be there. That's the guy Amanda and I told I was pregnant and had an abortion with. Maybe I will go there because Jason might be there. I'm such an evil bitch. I wish I had some cocaine right now.
he's seen the diaries, and as far as I know, these diaries were given to the police by Mr. Mackie, and that is what I believe Mr. Turner is talking about.
Okay. Did you ever have a conversation with Keith Hammond in relation to Mr. Mackie's file ever?
Jason Mackie attended an interview at Vancouver Police Headquarters at 312 Main Street, prompted by himself to follow up on a complaint of harassment that he himself made against Yvonne Gardner, along with the criminal mischief depicted in the diary, fabricated photos that both Yvonne Gardner and Amanda Schmidt made that were used in a criminal trial to obtain a conviction, along with other false police complaints against Jason Mackie. The interview was conducted by Detective Richard Rabinovich and Sgt Keith Hammond. Detective Richard Rabinovich and Sgt Keith Hammond interviewed Jason Mackie in an interrogation room, hoping to scare Mr. Mackie to drop his appeal and leave town. The two officers chose not to video record the interview.
The suspect attended 312 Main Street at 10:20 hours on the above-mentioned date, and Detective Constable Hammond and I met with the suspect. The suspect was advised that this was not going to be an interrogation, and that the purpose of the meeting was to advise him of our concerns about his alleged behavior and warn him about what will occur if he is found to be continuing any form of harassment against the victim. The suspect was advised of his rights pursuant to the charter, and he was advised that he could end the meeting at any time and that the interview was not being taped. The meeting was not a long one, but it was a very relaxed and professional meeting that mostly entailed us advising the suspect of our investigation and concerns about his behavior. The suspect advised that he understood what we were saying, and assured us that he had no intention of having any contact with the victim. The suspect advised that he felt that the victim continued to fabricate information to get him in trouble. I advised him that if that was the case, that he should definitely stay away from the victim, and not continue going to places that he knew she would frequent, so that he would not open himself to any further allegations. The suspect was still fearful of false allegations, and I advised him to do everything he could to not have contact with the victim. I further suggested that he could take a vacation or go away from the city for a while, if that was at all possible, so that he does not put himself in any inappropriate situations that could get him in further trouble. I then suggested that given all the stress that he was alleging that he had been through, it could only be helpful to his own health to get away for a period of time.
Yes, on the day of the allegation. Alright, the day of what Keith Hammond did to me. What he did to me was, well, after our evening out with staff and his endless stories of his sexual exploits, he asked me to drive him home. He made an excuse to stop by BC Place Stadium so that he could pick up some paperwork for the upcoming Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City. Keith was in charge of security of Canada's hockey team, which my distant cousin just so happened to be the team captain. When he returned to me, he exposed his banana. No. That's it. He said, "So you've never given a blowjob before?" He then grabbed me by my hair and tried to get me to give him fellatio. When I refused him, he then jerked off in my Jeep and ejaculated in 10 seconds.
A Vancouver area woman is suing a city police officer for sexual assault, sexual harassment and making false statements about her at the Olympic Games in Salt Lake City. Blanka Sakic, who her lawyer says is a distant relative of Canadian hockey star Joe Sakic, filed a civil lawsuit this week in British Columbia Supreme Court against Vancouver Police Sgt Keith Hammond. The lawsuit also alleges that Hammond, while attending the Olympics, said that Blanka Sakic was working for Olympic security and she was bad-mouthing Joe Sakic and the entire Olympic hockey team, making an ass of herself. The lawsuit alleges the defamatory statements were communicated to Joe Sakic and other members of the Canadian Olympic hockey team and its entourage.
Sgt Keith Hammond's accusations were a made-up lies. Blanka was not working for Olympic security, nor did she attend the Olympic Games, nor was she even in the United States at the time of the accusation.
What did that conversation involve?
We were in the restaurant, and everything he kept saying was about his sexual experiences. And for me, to diverse from that, I sat was with Jason Mackie. And as you put here about physical attributes, he had stated, "Did you see his girl?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, she's got big tits and she's gorgeous, and Mr. Rabinovich was just distracted, and that's just the way life goes."
Sgt Keith Hammond threw Detective Richard Rabinovich under the bus by stating that it was a simple case of being pussy-whipped and distracted by the complainant Yvonne Gardner, and the fact that she had huge tits and admitted Yvonne's father was in fact a huge influence over Detective Rabinovich.
All right. Did you relate those comments to anyone?
Yes, I did.
To who?
I said that to Jason and Mr. Turner.
Did you ever think that by saying that to Jason or Mr. Mackie would compromise the investigation that Detective Rabinovich was conducting?
No, because I didn't believe that there was an investigation going on with Mr. Mackie, and it was closed as far as I knew.
All right. Were you aware that Mr. Mackie made attempts to make additional contact with, or has made additional contact with, Detective Rabinovich over an extended period of time, even after this file?
Jason Mackie relentlessly tried to contact Detective Richard Rabinovich to get him to investigate Yvonne Gardner for mischief and all these false allegations against Jason and fabricated photos made by his estranged ex-girlfriend Yvonne Gardner and Amanda Schmidt-Maid. And wanted both Yvonne and Amanda charged. At this time, Jason Mackie was unaware that Yvonne Gardner had already had Detective Richard Rabinovich influenced and cooking like a frog.
There was no further contact with the victim, however the suspect began to contact myself and Detective Constable Keith Hammond. The suspect was wondering if the department was considering charges against the victim for harassment of him or public mischief for what he called false allegations against him. The suspect was advised by myself that there were no significant grounds to support a charge of harassment against the victim, and that our department would not look into public mischief charges for his charges in Karamias.
All I know that Mr. Mackie was trying to get a hold of all the disclosure of information, because since it was closed, Rabinovich told him that he could have anything out of his file, and that's why he was contacting him, because he wanted stuff from his file. That's all I know.
Now, in Mr. Mackie's statement to Internal Investigation Section investigators, he stated that Sgt. Hammond had expressed, or he stated that Sgt. Hammond had expressed to you concerns that he had with respect to both Mr. Mackie and the complainant's mental stability, and that Ms. Sakic, that's you, should avoid any contact with Mr. Mackie.
Yes.
Do you remember the circumstances surrounding that?
Keith came out of the office once he was already sergeant, and came out and he said, you know, Blanka, I know you're friends, you met with Mr. Mackie, you met him through your neighbor, and he goes, you know, he's unstable and his case has been going for 3 years. And you know, both him and his ex-girlfriend, you know, I would really think you should probably avoid these type of people.
Sgt. Keith Hammond was hoping to pit Blanka Sakic against Jason Mackie and their friendship in hopes that she wouldn't tell Jason Mackie of the alleged sexual assault that Sgt. Keith Hammond allegedly committed upon her. Sgt. Keith Hammond also knew of Detective Richard Rabinovich's attempted malfeasance to poo-poo and shoo-shoo, the evidence Jason Mackie presented to them proving the crimes perpetrated against him.
Okay, did you relate that information to Mr. Mackie?
I did, yes.
Okay, just so I'm clear on this, with respect to the Mackies, this investigation that Detective Rabinovich was involved with at some point, who told you the investigation was over?
Richard Rabinovich and Sgt. Hammond.
When would they have told you that? If you can't remember the exact dates, just give me an idea when they would have told you that the investigation was over and closed.
As soon as I started there, because I met Mackie right either this end of September or beginning of October. Can't remember the exact date. But when I mentioned, I met this guy, Jason Mackie. Do you guys know him? Both Rabinovich and Hammond say yes, we know him. And I told you what he said, and that yes, that the file is closed, he's been acquitted.
Would it surprise you to learn then, with the file with respect to the Vancouver Police that Detective Rabinovich was investigating, with respect to ongoing allegations of criminal harassment, were in fact open and continuing?
Detective Richard Rabinovich was hoping Blanka Sakic would not be knowledgeable of the continued investigation by falsely telling her that the case was closed and over while it was actually ongoing, with hopes to trip Jason Mackie up in his attempt to appeal his conviction for assault.
No, I had no idea.
Were there any conversations that the staff had with respect to the file?
Never.
Okay. Did you ever ask anyone with respect to the file what their opinions were of Mr. Mackie?
No, just what I just told you.
Just to Rabinovich and Hammond?
Yes.
All right. Is it accurate then with Mr. Mackie's statement that you had advocated on his behalf to Detective Constable Rabinovich that he wasn't?
Yes.
Okay. How did you do that? Can you relate the circumstances?
I said, I met this guy and I believe his story. I believe what he's saying to me.
All right. Anything else you can remember saying?
No. There was talk about some photographs. I've never seen these photographs. Photographs of supposedly they're made up photographs.
The suspect has exhibited bizarre behavior to myself in one interview when he was discussing his belief about the victim falsifying bruises. The suspect was trying to show me that bruises have a certain look to them when a person is hit. It was at that moment that he punched himself 3 to 4 times with very significant force on his own thigh. I actually had to advise him to stop hitting himself. This was not necessary to demonstrate, as I had already agreed with him a couple of times, and I advised him that in my opinion there was some concern about the displayed injuries. The problem, as I explained to him, was that there was no way to prove this, and that it would have to be an investigation done by the Karamios RCMP, since they would technically be the ones whom he alleged were lied to by the victim.
Jason Mackie was keen enough to do a controlled experiment in front of the 2 detectives. All the detectives would have had to do is call Jason Mackie in the next day to see the results of him hitting his thigh.
Constable Sheets has stated that his remarks contained in the original RTCC were in error and that his subsequent court testimony was correct. He has explained that his recollection of the red marks on the victim's neck was, in essence, triggered by his review of the investigation file 9 months after his original involvement in the matter. This explanation defies common sense and casts serious doubt on Constable Sheets' remarks. The complainant alleges that Constable Sheets lied when he testified that he saw red marks on Ms. Gardner's neck. I understand Mr. Mackie's concern with regard to the contradiction between Constable Sheets' original observation that the victim had no visible injuries and the officer's testimony at trial that the victim had a red mark on her neck. I acknowledge that this contradiction could easily lead to the conclusion that Constable Sheets did provide false evidence at trial and undermines the credibility of his testimony. Though suspect, such an apparent contradiction does not in itself constitute proof that Constable Sheets intentionally gave false evidence at trial. Hi Jason, the reason at that time I did it was because of Yvonne's bad influence on me. I was young and foolish. I hope you understand. I am sincerely sorry again. Wishing you all the best. Take care, Amanda.
After receiving Amanda Schmidt's email, Jason Mackie contacted Constable Sabo of the Karamios RCMP to file a complaint and wanted both Amanda Schmidt and Yvonne Gardner charged for fabricating photos of injuries used at his trial to convict him.
Jason, so I did have a chance to speak with Amanda on the phone. My impression from the phone call, and our discussion about your emails was that she has a great deal of remorse for what happened. In reading all the material you have provided and from my discussion with her, I believe she felt the pressure you intended, which was for her to feel she needed to come forward to you and admit she had some involvement. In our conversation, she was afraid to say she made them, or that she helped, in any way, as she understands it's a pretty crappy and illegal thing to have done, or to have been involved with. In short, she never admitted straight out to me she was involved. She is a teacher of young people now, as you know, and I am thinking she is trying to make the world a better place, one little human at a time. As I have said to many clients, everyone has a past. Not everyone is proud of every moment in their lives. According to Amanda, she was never called to testify in court, which I think may have been a mistake by Crown and defense, but that is my personal opinion as it could have revealed the truth back in 2000. I cannot speak to the issues with the member you emailed about as I don't have knowledge of those particular events. I only know as much as what the media reports. I will say after getting a full understanding of what happened to you, as a person, I am truly sorry. This file will be documented showing that in the email correspondence between the two of you, it appears that Amanda had knowledge the photos were faked and has remorse for this, her knowledge and/or her actions. In reference to your email, about having your name cleared, according to the court records, you were cleared on October 2nd of 2001 and the records show nothing else. So I can assure you, your name was cleared on that date in the courts, nor the police have ever looked back to state otherwise. This file will not state anything different. Jason, please let me know if this is satisfactory to you. Stay safe, Brad.
I've never seen them before, and about the diary.
All right. Now, with respect to the photographs, where did that information come from?
From Jason Mackie telling me that there were photographs given to Crown when this was ongoing. That these photographs were completely made up photographs.
Okay. Did you ever tell Mr. Mackie that the file on him that Detective Urbinovich was investigating was a large file?
Jason Mackie's file was in fact large, but only because of the overwhelming amount of documented evidence Mackie himself had in his possession and that he gave to the police to prove his allegations against Yvonne Gardner and the corrupt RCMP. Officer Constable Dale Sheets.
Everybody knows it's a large file.
I knew it was big.
He knows it's a large file. Rabinovich always says it's the biggest file I have. So yeah, I had to say yes, it's quite a large file.
With respect to this diary, Mackie said that you had told him that there was a diary in the file?
Yes, he has told me. Mr. Mackie had first told me about the diary. He said, I have the diary, I got this diary and I gave this diary to the police. Now, a fax did come in for the Mackie case. Rabinovich was not working that day. I took as the secretary, I took these documents from the fax machine. I went to put on his desk now. All of his files were by his window. And it says the name. So I thought instead of getting it loose, I took the Mackie files and I opened it up. So I saw there were diaries and it was highlighted, and all I saw was one point where she has described that she had manipulated saying she was pregnant, but she wasn't. And I was like, oh my God. So I put the faxes inside the file and closed it and left it on Richard Rabinovich's desk. That's all I've ever seen, and that's the only time I've ever opened that file.
Okay. But with respect to Mackie's comments, that you had told him that you had seen...
Yes, and then I said, oh my God. I read this one part where she said she faked her pregnancy and Oh, she's crazy.
In hindsight, do you think that perhaps there's a perception there could be a problem with discussing that complaint with Mr. Mackie?
No, because he gave those diaries to the police.
Again, Mr. Mackie is saying in his statement that you had brought up the fact that you had seen the diary and that there were portions were highlighted.
I only saw one highlighted one part.
I agree. But what he's saying that when asked as whether you had disclosed any information from the file to him, he said in response to that question that you had told him about the diaries, that it was in the file, that he also responded that he knew the diary was in the file because he provided it to the police, but then you had raised the subject.
Well, yeah, because when I saw it, I went, oh my God, because next time I saw him, I was like, yeah, I saw the diary. I just saw the one highlighted part and I thought, oh my God, she's insane. And that's all that was said.
All right. Did you ever inquire with Mr. Mackie as to a meeting he had with Sgt Hammond and the outcome of that meeting?
As stated earlier, Jason Mackie made an attempt to file a complaint against Gardner to Detective Rabinovich and Sgt Keith Hammond, but did so in vain because the plan to poo-poo and shoo-shoo Jason Mackie's evidence was already in motion, and the hope Jason Mackie would get scared, drop his complaint, and leave town.
Yes, I talked to him about it after the meeting. I said, how did your meeting go? Because I was aware that Keith was having a meeting with him. He said it went fine.
How are you...
With respect to this.
Sorry. How were you aware that he was having a meeting?
Because I knew Keith told me that he was having a meeting with him at 9 a.m.
Did you do anything to facilitate that meeting with Mr. Mackie?
How would I facilitate a meeting with Mr. Mackie?
I don't know. I'm just asking.
No.
All right. With respect to the correspondence related to the vacation, the complainant, Mr. Mackie's file had, do you know anything about the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino correspondence?
It was at this point in Detective Richard Rabinovich's investigation that he realized he was being cooked like a frog and that his ass hat was on too tight, all while being duped by Yvonne Gardner.
The victim provided me with a letter from the hotel she stayed at in Las Vegas. The victim obviously provided the letter since it indicated the dates that she stayed at the hotel. The dates that were suggested on the confirmation letter from the hotel were different from the date the suspect suggested on his tape. The victim must have felt that the letter would be enough to create doubt. However, the letter itself was suspicious. It was somewhat frayed and appeared to be letter writing paper with a hotel's logo on it, the kind that is left in a hotel room for guests. This suspicion led me to contact the hotel and speak with their security personnel. I also faxed them a copy of the letter provided to me by the victim. The investigator for the hotel advised me that the letter was not on their official business letterhead, but it was on the letter writing paper that they leave in the rooms. He further advised that the hotel would never correspond with anyone using that letter paper, and that the person who signed the letter is unknown to the hotel and does not work for them. The hotel investigator provided a statement of the above, and I was now in possession of what appeared to be a false document provided to me by the victim. I then contacted the victim. Please advise if you can confirm this letter's contents to be true. The dates that the parties listed were to have stayed in your hotel, and if the writer does work for your hotel. I thank you in advance for any assistance you can provide with this matter of some urgency. Paper used in the letter you questioned me about is guest room paper supplied to all out guests. Corporate letterhead is a totally different form that is computer generated. Hope this information is of some help.
When I read that, I had no idea what you guys were talking about. I have no idea what is that file, and I think you should be asking Mr. Mackie what the heck it's about. Case. I have no idea of any resort in the case.
Now, just so I'm clear on this, is it that you were told by both Detective Constable Richard Rabinovich and Sgt Hammond that Mackie's file, that he was acquitted and the file was closed?
Closed.
Again, do you have any specific recollection as when they would have told you that?
They told me that when I asked them, oh, I met this guy named Jason Mackie, and that's the comment. Was he crazy? She's even crazier. And that her father is very influential, but he acquitted.
And again, I just want to be certain about this. Even though he was acquitted and he was having continuing contact with the police in an attempt to get his FOI, Freedom of Information, to get his information from his file, were you not aware that there were ongoing allegations made by Miss Gardner?
No.
And you had related some information to Mr. Mackie, but because either the file was concluded or he was acquitted or he already knew that the information,
He was first of all him as a person. Him knowing that I'm the secretary in DVACH, he would never ever ask me to go into the file and get him documentation. He would never do that, and I wouldn't. And if he did ever ask me such question, I would never ever.
Well, I'm not suggesting that you did. I'm just suggesting that there were times when you related some comments made by the investigators to Mr. Mackie.
Well, yeah, because they were uncalled for comments. Maybe they should be talking to sergeant and to the detective why they commanded like that.
The concern again is did you give any thought to the fact that relating some comments to Mr. Mackie, even though the matter in your mind was he was acquitted or still having contact with the police, having contact with Mr. Mackie, or making comments or relating comments to Mr. Mackie might undermine an investigation that may have to be reopened?
I didn't realize the investigation was still going on.
Now, this is something you may not, I'll just ask you. I understand at some point when you were being interviewed by different people, you offered to take a polygraph examination. If, just hypothetically speaking, if I were to ask you were to take a polygraph, what would you like to be asked in order to clear yourself of these allegations?
You can ask all these questions.
Okay, which would you like to be asked in particular?
You can ask me all these questions that you've listed here.
The question would have to be yes or no. If you were, I'm giving you the opportunity to come up with a question that you can answer truthfully, either yes or no.
You can ask me this last one in an interview. This one here about the casino. I'll say yes or no. All this, like I just finished telling you, yes, yes, yes. So you can ask me all of these questions in the polygraph.
I think you answered yes to most of them.
So you can ask me all these questions on the polygraph.
All right, then if you were to be asked, for example, did you believe that the file was acquitted and the police were not investigating Mr. Mackie or Detective Rabinovich?
Yes. I still don't understand why I'm being put in the spot after what I've been through. It's bullshit.
Well, the reason why I've been asked, well, you have a right to your opinion, but I'm prepared to provide you an explanation if you'd like.
I understand, but Blanka, but if you didn't take the time...
During the course of the internal investigation with the interview, Mr. Turner and Mr. Mackie, information came to light from comments that have been made. There could have been some abuse of the information on Mr. Mackie's file by you. Well, in order to, I guess, maintain independence, I was asked to come in and conduct a review of his file. The internal file in which I learned information pertaining to the allegation of improper disclosure. So that is why I've been asked to do this, and that's why we're doing it in the manner that we're doing this. It's unfortunate that we have to meet like this, but that's why it has to be done.
Unfortunately, it's become a very complex investigation and unusual.
Has Keith Hammond been investigated?
Sgt Keith Hammond's initial lawyer dropped out of the case when it was allegedly learned that Sgt Keith Hammond's semen was found in the interior of Blanka Sakic's Jeep. It was said that Sgt Keith Hammond refused to answer internal affairs questions and stormed out of the interview in a hissy fit.
Well, he is being investigated. He's being investigated through internal investigation.
Well, internal told me that he wouldn't speak.
Well, you can't force someone to speak, but they are being investigated.
Actually, are you able, Lawrence? I appreciate that's maybe not your department, but are we any closer to hearing Crown's determinations? And I know, Bob, I was hoping to speed that process along.
Don't know the first thing about that. Does anybody else have any questions? I'll just go over a few things before we conclude.
If there is anything new, Lawrence, and if Blanka needs a minute to think, then, well, take that opportunity. If it's just back to this, then we are fine.
Again, I just want to be perfectly clear that with respect to this diary, Mr. Mackie, in Mr. Mackie's statement, he said that you had brought up the diary, that you had brought up the subject of the diary, and that you had told him that you had seen a diary. And the content of that response to Mr. Mackie's interview was that this diary has never been brought up by him, but to you before, and that you had brought up the diary initially.
No, I had no. He has always told me about the diary. He has told me about the diary and he sent the police the diary. And when I saw the highlighted in one part, said to him, I said, oh my God, you're right, this woman is wacky. From the highlighted part, I did read.
All right, great. He already told you that, is that correct? Did he already told you that there was?
There was a diary, yeah.
Any reason why he would say that you had disclosed the information to him first without him ever saying anything about it?
I don't think. No, I don't. I don't understand why he would say that. I honestly don't believe why he did say that. I don't know. I'm not allowed to see the transcripts, but to me, I find this kind of odd.
All right, just one more question. With respect to even though you knew about it, even though he told you about it in your words, did you ever think that there's something perhaps discussing that diary in the content of that material in the file was inappropriate?
No, because he was acquitted and the file was closed as far as I knew.
All right, in hindsight, would you do things differently?
Well,
even if someone's been acquitted of a file, but the file is still in the hands of the police and there's still information coming in, would you discuss? I guess the idea I'm trying to get out of this conclusion is, I'm trying to draw here, do you think that in hindsight that it's appropriate behavior and you to do that in the future?
Well, the thing is, Mr. Mackie became my friend and I believe I don't believe that his file has been dealt with properly. No.
Okay, you don't believe that his file has been dealt with properly. Okay, I can respect that. But would your actions change in the future?
Well, obviously after this year, I just don't say anything at all, obviously. But why don't you ask Sgt Keith Hammond and Mr. Rabinovich that maybe they should be retrained, or about if I do ask about someone that they should say it's private and confidential information. And Blanka, you're not allowed to talk about two people. If you know them, don't bring it up. No one told me. They were just, they were giving me what they had. Their comments were about physical attributes and so forth.
Okay, so you think that you should have been told not to say anything about what the comments were that they made?
Absolutely. They knew I was his friend.
All right, and do you think that they should have told you as well not to discuss if the file was open or closed?
Yes.
I guess the understanding is that in this section, any other section, people have to make an application for confidence of the file. You can't just sit there and discuss.
But I never ever gave him anything from that file.
But even discussing it is what I'm saying, Blanka.
So I'm not allowed to discuss like he's my friend? I can't discuss this situation when he's been through hell for years. I can't discuss it.
I guess listen, I'm not going to be a judge here. I'm just saying that this is a situation, and that's why we're here discussing the contents of the file. You're alleged to have discussed contents of a file with a friend under investigation by the very department you work in.
He was not under investigation
He
at that
was,
time.
Blanka, that's the problem.
Well, no one told me, because as far as I knew, it was closed and he was acquitted. And Rabinovich told me that it's over.
Right, unfortunately it wasn't. That's the problem.
Well,
I just have one question, Blanka. Do you recall signing confidentially or an oath of confidentially?
yes, I did. And I'm sure Mr. Keith Hammond and Rabinovich signed the same document as well.
Okay, Karen,
No, I think I'm okay. Thank you.
Blanka, Kathy.
No, I'm fine.
All right, why don't we conclude the interview? It's 1,500 hours. Get under the table, get under the table. Dude, nobody comes in here.
Dear Blanka, I write to you to confirm the results of our meeting to understand the facts held on March 13, 2002. The attendees were Detective Constable Lawrence Rankin, Kathy Peters, Lyle Kent, Karen Maitland and myself. The objective of the meeting was to intercourse about the probable violation of confidence that came about from another ongoing investigation. During the meeting it was learned and you did admit to talking about an open investigation with no authority to do so with an individual under investigation. You said you were aware that you signed a sensitive and confidential material document which states that one will keep the confidence of Vancouver police investigations and information. This amounts to a breach of confidence and you will not be continuing on your short-term position in DVACH department. You have now been assigned to fulfill clerical duties supporting the Information Technology Department. You should take heed and notice of this written warning that discussing police affairs out of the workplace may qualify as a breach of confidence and any further breaches will lead to more disciplinary actions including dismissal from the Vancouver Police Department. Yours truly.
Hello, Blanka.
Hello?
Where are you right now?
I'm at work at the police station.
Jesus H. Christ, Blanka, what are you thinking? Those dirty, corrupt sons of bitches will try to plant drugs on you or something.
But I just,
Listen to me. I want you to collect any personal belongings and get the fuck out of there. And do it now. And call me when you're home.
Okay.
Bye.
Just a small town girl living in a lonely world. She took the midnight train going anywhere. Just a city boy owning raising softly drums. He took the midnight train going anywhere. A singer in a smoky room, a smell of wine and cheap perfume. For a smile they can share the night. It goes on and on and on and on. The strangers waiting, walking down the boulevard, their shadows searching in the night. Street lights weep up, never missed a fun emotion, hiding somewhere in the night. Working hard to get my fill. Everybody wants a thrill, paying anything to roll the dice just one more time. Some will win, some will lose. Some are born to sing the blues. Oh, the movie never ends. It goes on and on and on and on. The strangers waiting, looking down the boulevard.